It's no coincidence that oftentimes the lifters that are most frustrated with their lack of progress, the ones that are failing to reach their true natural muscular potential, are the ones that tend to focus too heavily on variables that are unimportant. Think supplementation or program hopping prematurely, the lure of that next best program. Patience leads them astray and they're unable to gain any momentum with any kind of programming. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what they do because the mindset and the approach to training is all wrong. At the end of the day, this journey isn't easy, as much as social media will lead you to believe that it is. For the average guy, it's not. And this is why you get guys that go to the gym year in, year out that look the same. They're very, underwhelmingly muscular. And this is what I call the hard gainer reality.
We all have the capability of improving our body and building muscle, but to actually look like a bodybuilder as a natural with average genetics is difficult, and it's going to take a lot of time. And really, as I said, unless you haven't seen impressive results already within the first sort of year or two of training, you're never going to see it. You're never going to see any substantial improvements unless something drastic changes within your approach to training or your mindset. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. I'm going to break it down into 3 segments to hopefully help you on your natural muscle building journey. Because at the end of the day, you or I have to focus a little bit more and be more on point with our training than those that are more genetically blessed. And I know it's a frustrating concept. You're in the gym, you're training consistently, you'd expect results to just happen, but it doesn't. Those guys with better genetics are going to see better results with lackluster training. You, with average genetics, doing the same lackluster training, are not going to see anywhere near the same returns. You need to be doing better, and that is just the reality of muscle building, guys. Ultimately, as lifters, we have to accept the responsibility is ours and ours alone, and it's our own fault why we're not seeing the kind of progress that we would hope for, irrespective of genetics. So let's identify the problems. Now, obviously, coaching can help massively. I offer coaching from £60 per month. Link is in the description box below. I promise to take your physique from a beginner level physique to an intermediate level physique within 6 to 9 months. You can see my examples here, over 20 5-star reviews on Google now. Okay, so let's get started with the first point, guys. So I'm going to talk about 3 points now, and I'm going to break each of these points into 2 subtopics. I'm going to try and highlight these in what I think would be the order of importance. Now, I think just quickly, I'd like to start off by saying that you need to be acceptant of the grind. You need to surrender yourself completely and utterly to the grind. There's no way around it. It's going to be a long journey. It's going to be often arduous and monotonous. It's just the way it goes. Now, I know I already said that you can't just rely on patience. If you haven't seen good results within the first year to 2 to 3 years of training, unless something changes drastically within your approach to training or your mindset, nothing is ever going to change. You're going to develop no more muscle, really, at least noticeably, no matter what you do. But let's assume that you tick the boxes off and you follow the concepts laid out in this video. It's still going to be a grind. You can't escape that, guys. There's going to be no shortcut that's going to give you exponentially better returns. There's no supplement that you can take that's going to give you, miraculously more muscle after 3 weeks, or a program that you're going to do that after 6 weeks adds 2-3 kilos of muscle on your frame, unless you're a complete beginner. It's just not going to be the case. You have to commit to the grind. There's no way around it, and just be okay with that. And you're going to enjoy this journey a lot more because it is very rewarding. So now, the first point, we're going to talk about exercise or movement execution. And we're going to break that down, as I said, into 2 points. The first one being stimulus. So are we able to effectively stimulate muscle growth via the stress placed upon that muscle with the movement that we're doing? Or is that effort misplaced and spent elsewhere that's not going to give us the kind of returns that we're looking for that particular movement? And this is really, really important. Now, form doesn't need to be perfect, but it needs to be decent enough that you're able to stimulate the muscle that you're focusing on. Important that you set up the movement in a way that's conducive to actually stimulating the target muscle. There's a big difference between effort and the intensity created on the muscle that you're trying to work, and especially towards the end of the set. Now, it's all well and good at the beginning of the set if your reps are tight. How your reps look at the end of the set when you're close to failure. Is there any discrepancy there? Are the angles changing? There's no good putting all that effort in, all that energy on those really hard last couple of reps if the tension isn't running through that target muscle. A lot of the times new clients will tell me that their form's really good, but upon review, there are definite things that we can improve on. So really, check your execution and make sure it's where it needs to be. Now, second to that is safety. It's the way that we're performing a movement, providing more risk, more chance of getting injured over time. For example, the way that we're doing bench press, potentially, the elbows flared, maybe the bar path is a little bit too high. Is that creating more risk of a shoulder impingement over time? Because ultimately, when we're injured, it's much, much harder to see progress in the gym. It's not impossible, but it's harder. You need to be more creative with your programming. And as someone that's already struggling to see results, it's unlikely that you have the knowledge to be able to kind of navigate through these obstacles. So you really need to try to avoid getting injured. And you do that by making sure your execution is effective for lowering that risk of injury. For example, another way that people often get injured would be doing the squats. The squats can be performed badly, and therefore the risk of knee injury goes up. Now, this obviously relates quite closely to exercise selection, but that's kind of a whole other topic. So first and foremost, make sure your exercise execution is where it needs to be in terms of stimulating the target muscle effectively. And secondly, is it done safely and in a way that enables you to lower the risk of injury over time? Really important points there. The next subject that I'm going to talk about is programming, which is obviously a very broad and massive topic. I'm going to try to break down into kind of subtopics for you. The first one being adherence. The second one being progressive overload or actual adaptation. So I'd say one of the biggest mistakes and most common problems that I see with struggling lifters or new clients would be the fact they've kind of bit off a little bit more than they can chew with their program selection. They can't quite adhere to it long term, and that leads them to prematurely program hop. It's just creating this vicious cycle. So be realistic with the time that you have available. We often have very busy schedules these days with work and family, and it's hard to kind of balance. That's why I tend to recommend a program that's lower volume, lower frequency, at least initially with my clients. Go off your worst week. What's the time availability for your worst week? Worst case scenario. What do you have available to spend in the gym? And then go from there. Because on a good week, it should be a breeze. That's the best way of doing it. So take a step back and be very honest with yourself about how much time you have to spend in the gym. Because you need to be consistent with this. You need something that's reliable and something you can get in and do week in, week out. And that's the problem with copying some of these high volume, high frequency training protocols that need you in the gym 5-6 days a week for 1-2 hours at a time. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not feasible for the average guy, unfortunately, a lot of the times. So yeah, that's a really, really big one. Second to that is the concept of the progression within the program. How are we going to create adaptation? It's obviously very, very important and something that is often overlooked within a struggling lifter's program. Now, there are many different ways of creating adaptation. We often hear the term progressive overload thrown around. What does it actually mean? Well, essentially creating a reason to become stronger or grow bigger muscle. Now, training adaptation can be for any stimulus. If you want to get fast, you want to develop more power, you want to improve your endurance, your training has to be specific to that, of course. It's very important to recognize the difference between actual training and having a workout. And too often we fall into that trap of doing the latter, myself included. So with the training, we need to carefully think and create a model or a concept of training adaptation that's going to create a reason for our body to change over a period of time. And ultimately, as bodybuilders, we want bigger muscles. So how are we going to do that? Now, there are many ways of creating these adaptations through progressive overload, many different schemes. And I'm not going to go into too much depth with this video. Obviously, I'd need a whole nother video to talk about this stuff. But essentially, there isn't one way that's dramatically better than any other way. So just take a step back, spend some time and think about a model or a concept that you're going to use. Are you going to increase the reps on a certain weight, AMRAP? Are you going to increase the weight via mini poundages? Are you going to do a double progression method where you increase the reps to a certain threshold and then increase the weight? Are you going to do a double dynamic progression scheme where you've got maybe a block of 3 sets, and if you hit the rep target on the first set, you up the weight but lower the weight for the second and third sets until you hit that prescribed rep target? Are you going to add more volume over time? Are you going to change the rep ranges with each block of training, as I mentioned in my last video? Are you going to work on your form or make movements more difficult perhaps, or use advanced training techniques to increase the volume within a block of time that you've got available? There are so many different ways of going about this, guys. So as I said, think about the concept that you want to use. They're all, useful and effective. You just have to apply it and stick to it and be patient and have faith in it. That's really, really important. Create a plan, have faith in it and commit to it. And then you can actually see whether it's working or not over a longer period of time. So yeah, super, super important that we actually train and we don't work out. Now, working out's great. You get a lot of benefits, obviously, from going to the gym mentally. It makes you feel good. But if you want to actually create adaptations, there has to be a reason for the body to change. And that's where your training plan comes in. Now, last but not least, we're going to talk about training intensity. And again, a very broad subject. This is going to be broken down into 2 mini topics. The first one is your training per set intensity. Really, really important. And the second one is going to be your mental kind of intensity going into the gym, your mental approach to training. Okay, so with training intensity, it could be classed as RPE, or reps left in reserve. Essentially, how hard are you working, and more specifically, how close you are to momentary muscular failure during that set. Typically, it's expressed as concentric failure with normal kind of traditional sets. And to see better results, that needs to be very high. There's no 2 ways about that. That is going to be the most important and influential factor in determining your ability to build muscle. And time again, it's what I see with clients that are struggling to build muscle. Their intensity is lackluster. And oftentimes, they'll tell me that their intensity in the gym is really good. Oh, it's definitely not the training. I train really hard. It's got to be something else. Lo and behold, the training intensity is very poor. There's a big difference between actual correct training intensity that's stimulative for creating adaptations, previously spoke about in the last topic, and effort in the gym. Building up a sweat in the gym, or getting out of breath, or thinking that you're working hard, but not actually placing more and more stress on that target muscle. Very, very big difference here, guys. So you must make sure that your actual intensity placed, or your stress placed upon a muscle within each set, is where it needs to be. And we need to make sure that's a kind of baseline level for most of your sets that you're going to be doing. Now, it doesn't need to be all your sets, but at certain points, there's no escaping. You have to train with a very good and high level of intensity, with most of your sets being very close to failure, if not at failure, or even some cases beyond failure. And that comes at a cost of certain things like recovery and such, and maybe pose a higher risk of injury. But generally speaking, if you're training with maybe 5, 6, 4 reps in the bag, and you think that you're training hard, and that's the problem, because a lifter will think that they're training hard. It's not until you train with someone, or you're able to use a coach potentially, or you really study someone hard that trains hard, that you realise, hang on a minute, there's actually a lot more left that I can do, I can commit to within each set. And the results will just explode once you commit yourself to that after a period of time. It's going to make the most difference in your physique development. And that's why it's at the top of this list, the top of the pyramid, guys. It trumps program selection, even trumps exercise form. If your exercise form's okay, but your training intensity is very, very, very high consistently, you're going to see better results than if your form is perfect and your training intensity is lackluster. So it's so important. Use videos to film yourself, check your intensity. Just as much as videos are helpful for form, they're even more helpful for intensity, because a set always feels harder than it looks. It's not until reflection we're able to see that actually we're able to give more to that set. So this is number one. And second to that, as well, within this subject of intensity, it's your mindset. Your mindset has to change. You have to be willing to go above and beyond, to train harder than you previously thought possible, to do more potentially than you previously thought possible, to go into a set and not be scared and not hold back. There's a certain skill element to this that takes time to learn. And that's why I always say to people, it's better to start out as a young lifter working on your training intensity. Your form and your programming will come second to that. Later on, work on your training intensity. Understand how it feels to train really hard. The mindset that you need to psych yourself up to go to those levels where you're going to be perhaps in some pain, or in some big compounds, it's going to be maybe a little bit daunting or a bit scary. That's one of the benefits that I got personally from squatting. Very heavy loads, very close to failure, very consistently. Whilst it might not have been, especially with some of the weights that I was lifting, the best thing in terms of safety, it taught me how to train hard and to never be scared going into a set, to really kind of give it my all and just, just go for it. Now, I had the right mindset going into these movements like the squat and the deadlift. I didn't have the form, the execution required to consistently do this safely over time. And that's what let me down. So it was the execution rather than the kind of mental intensity going into these sets that perhaps led to results not being as good as they could be for myself. But it's really important. You might very well have to kind of flick a switch and turn into a different man once you're in the gym. I'm a different Ross when I'm in the gym compared to when I'm out. Different beast altogether. If you look at guys like Tom Platz, for example, very softly spoken, a real gentleman, very polite, at least comes across that way, but in the gym is a complete maniac. And sometimes that's what it takes to be able to train at the kind of level that you need to build an impressive natural muscular physique, because it's not hard, guys. It's not easy, rather. It's going to be harder than those that are on steroids to kind of get that impressive physique that we're trying to build. So open your mind up to the kind of level that we need potentially to go to when we go into the gym. So that's pretty much the end of the video, guys. Hopefully that was helpful. There are 3 points there that if you take on board and apply to your training, that you should see very, very good progress over a period of time. Now, if you have any questions alluding to this video, then please leave them in the comment section below. Just as a reminder, I do offer online coaching. Prices go from £60 per month. And if you want to kind of speed up this process, take out the guesswork, then I'm happy to do that for you guys. Alternatively, my free newsletter is also available in the links for natural bodybuilding information sent out to your email box once a week. And obviously all my free programs as well on Google Sheets, low volume, low frequency training programs that are completely free. All you need to do is pop in your email address to get access to those. So I'll see you on the next video, guys. In the meantime, stay strong. Cheers.